let's open a file and start to experiment with some of these selection tools. I'm going to go to File, Browse and Bridge. And what that's going to do is open Bridge. If you haven't used it, it is very cool and makes your life a lot easier. It's, I think, an integral part of an efficient workflow. Here are some shortcuts. If you want to pause the video and write these down, these are shortcuts that I will be using for this video. Okay, I'm going to click from Word into Bridge, and Bridge lets me navigate to my folder and lets me pick an image. So I'm going to go to my desktop, into Zine, you can see where you are at any time using the breadcrumbs up here. I have it set in Essentials, which is going to give me a preview of the item, the metadata, and any keywords. It's going to take a minute to open. Let's go back to the shortcuts while we are waiting for Bridge to open. Okay. Now, here we go. I'm going to zoom, scroll down, and grab this picture of Walter's stinky reindeer head. You can see a preview of the image here, the metadata, which tells you the f-stop and the shutter speed, the white balance, the ISO, image size, metadata, color space, the name of the file, when it was taken, dimensions, resolution. This is, if you're a photographer, this is an amazing program and an amazing tool. I could also filter it. If I wanted to just see the GIFs, I could click just see the GIFs. It didn't delete anything, it's just showing me that. If I want to see just the PNGs, I can see just the PNGs. If I want to see just the JPEGs, I can click that and it just changes what I'm seeing. In this case, I want to see the folder. We're going to go in and select an image of Walter to play with. When you see this little icon here, it looks a little like the Death Star. That means that that image has been edited in Camera Raw, which is a part of Photoshop and is used to manage raw files from your camera. Let's grab this image here. I'm going to double click and it will open in Photoshop automatically. In this case, it's trying to open my Photoshop Creative Cloud and it may take just a moment. I could also tell it where to open by right-clicking and saying, hey, go into CS6. That's working a little faster for me. In this case, I'm going to force quit the Creative Cloud. We don't need to open. All right, we have our toolbar, option bar, status bar. This is how zoomed it is. This tells you the document size, profile, timing, efficiency, current tool. We have our history. This tells us everything that we've done. Our adjustments, which will allow us to add color, contrast, warmth, cool, and many special effects. And then our channels, paths, and layers are all nested together. Before I start working on any file, I duplicate the background. Every file comes with a locked, italicized background layer. I like to grab that background layer and drag it over to the icon next to the little trash can. That little icon will duplicate the layer. Now, if I didn't want to do that in my history, I just have to click up to where I was happy and it will undo that. The history is a much more efficient way for working back and forth in the image instead of Control-Z. I can also right-click and duplicate the layer. I can name it something different if I choose, but I think that's a good title, background copy. The goal when I'm working with photographic images is to always keep this locked original background layer turned off and hidden. By turning off the eye, I am keeping it safe and just working on the pixels that are on this background copy. That video is all done, and Camtasia wants me to know. Thank you, Camtasia. Okay. Thank you very much, Camtasia. I'm just going to put you down over here. Okay, so back in Photoshop, I am working on this file. I have the Move tool selected. I have duplicated the layer. The history will tell me everything that I've done. And I have turned off the background layer using the eye, left it alone, and made a background copy that I can experiment in. Let's select a tool such as, let's see, let's get the quick select. W is the shortcut. And I'm going to drag it along Walter. And you'll see it makes a pretty beautiful selection without any additional work. We need to get this part of the couch gone though. So if I hold down the Option key and go in here, it will subtract that from the selection. If I hold down the Shift key, it will add that to the selection. Get rid of a little bit over here, hold down the Option, Shift will add, Option subtracts. You can see up in the control bar, when I hold the Option, the minus appears next to the cursor. When I hold the Shift, the plus appears next to the cursor. So you are adding and subtracting from your selection. In this case, I have just a 13 pixel selection. It's very hard, however, and I think if I take the hardness down, it will be a little more forgiving on some of the edges. I don't need sample all layers selected. I would if there were other visible layers, but right now I only have one visible layer. And I can go into the Refine Edge box later in another movie. For now, what I want to do is select this puppy and move him to a different layer all by himself. So these marching ants are a selection. All right? Anything inside of those marching ants is selected, and anything outside is not selected. So once I've got that, I can go to Layer, New Layer, via Copy or Cut. If I go to my Layers panel, you can see it copied him out of the background copy onto another layer. Let's do that again. I'm going to go back up in my history to the duplicate layer, and I'm going to select the Lasso tool. Lasso tool is a very popular selection tool, but it's a freehand selection tool, and it's it's not really the best for selecting this kind of thing. I could be here all day using the Shift to add and the minus to subtract. I can hit Command D or select deselect to try again. The Marquee tool has several options, but I don't think any of those are going to work. This is the default Marquee tool. It's not a great selection. Command D to deselect. Now, when you want to select tools that live or have roommates, you need to hold down, press on that tool, and the options will come up. You can see these aren't great options either. I'm going to go back to the Quick Select and try the Magic Wand tool. Magic Wand tool has several different options. The tolerance is how many pixels. So if I click here, it will go 32 above and 32 below the pixel that I selected. Right, notice how it's not selecting just the brown, selecting most of the black, and hit Command D. If I uncheck contiguous, it will select that tonal range even if it is not touching. In some cases, that works great, but in this case, I want the areas I select to be touching. I don't need to sample all layers because I only have one layer turned on. So I'm going to up the tolerance a little bit. You can slide it or you can type in. I'm going to hold on the shift and keep clicking. But I clicked too close to the green and it selected most of the couch. So if I were to make a selection for this file, I would go back to the quick select, make sure that my brush is a little softer, and then start in the one ear, drag it over to the other, come back around, and get the nose. Hold down the Option to clean up that little bit around the face, and then I can make a new layer from that selection. Layer, new layer, via copy, and there you go. I'm going to double click where it says layer 1 and name it Walter Sleeping. You want to name all of your layers, that way you can stay organized. It is now visible. Now both this layer with Walter and the background copy are visible. So we're doing good. All right, I'm going to go back to the Move tool, select Walter Sleeping, and move him so that you can see we have one layer here, one layer here. Okay, in the next video, we'll learn how to clean up that selection a little bit. Let's go to File, Save As, and we'll type in Walter Cutout. I'm going to navigate to where I want to save that file. I'm going to save it in Summer 14. The format needs to be Photoshop. And even though the file was originally a JPEG, it defaulted to Photoshop when I started to make layers. Photoshop, or .psd, supports layers. So you make sure this is checked. Make sure you've got .psd. It's named properly, with no spaces or other weird emoticons, and hit Save. You'll see in the tab here, it's saving, and there you go. Cool.